Wow, we have a lot to get to today. Welcome, everyone, to the Media Row podcast with Justin Miller. I can't wait to jump into today's show. We have Drake women's basketball to get to, Drake men's basketball to preview, both of them playing this Saturday, tomorrow. And then we blink, and it's the college football playoffs. It is finally here. After 2 long weeks of being without it, we have the first game tonight of Indiana going on the road to play Notre Dame. Snow on the ground this morning at like 7 a.m. You open up Twitter and you see cars lined up. I love how we have playoff football at true homes. No neutral sites in this first round. Maybe we should extend it to just everyone plays at home until you reach the national championship. Sorry, there was some fuzz on there. But should be an absolute blast today. Cannot wait. Let's just jump right into it. We're going to start with the Drake women's hoops. Drake goes on the road to play St. Thomas, and they're riding a 3-game winning streak. A great way from Pullman and the players to respond to what was their worst start in school history since 2020-2021. So this is a team that is a veteran group of gals that know how to respond to adversity. And even in those losses, the trip during, the Thanksgiving break, those are always tricky when you travel so far. Those are tough games to judge. They weren't getting blown out by any means, and Katie just wasn't playing to her best. The team wasn't playing to their best. Those are losses I can live with. And then against really talented teams like Iowa and Iowa State, you really go neck to neck. You fought punch for punch. Can't complain about those losses either. So while it was their worst start since 2020, you look at the teams they lost to, it wasn't anything outrageous by any means. But 3-game winning streak, this team is responding. They're going up against a St. Thomas team that has a okay team. But what has really stood out to me in these past few weeks, in these 3 games, has been the ability of Courtney Becker and Ava Hawthorne. Those two have helped Katie Dinnebier and Anna Miller in the starters so much. Courtney Becker's one of the starters, but Ava Hawthorne, let's start with her. Coming off the bench, she has put up points after points, led the team in points with 18 a few nights ago, and just has this energy off the bench. When we spoke with Pullman, she said it perfectly, where she knows her role and she knows exactly what she needs to do to help this Drake team. And Ava Hawthorne off the bench has been Drake's biggest weapon, I think, in their 3-game winning streak. Yeah, Katie Dinnebier has done what she does do when she puts up double-doubles. She is able to get steals, get the offense into transition. That's just what she does, and she's great at it. So we know what to expect from Katie night after night. Anna Miller, you're going to get a beast in the paint, someone that is really talented in rebounding. I've been really impressed with her ability this season to stretch the floor for the Bulldogs and be able to hit that 3-point shot. 5 straight games now with a 3-pointer made. That's her career high, and she could keep it going easily against St. Thomas. But Ava Hawthorne coming off the bench with no sense of drag. I mean, sometimes you get people off the bench, and it just takes a while for them to get into the rhythm because they've been cold. They've been sitting. No sense of that with Ava Hawthorne. She comes in, and she's ready to go. She's confident with her shot. She's confident driving into the paint. She knows where to be on offense. She has been outstanding, and again, I'll say it. I said it earlier this week. She is my vote for 6th player of the year in the Missouri Valley as of right now. The other player, in Courtney Becker, she may not be a beast in the offense in terms of just points, but man, she cleans up the glass, and she is physical, and she likes it too. She is someone who instigates the pressure and the physicality in the paint going for boards, and she's really good at it. I love watching Courtney Becker. 9 rebounds a game. She goes after every jump ball. She's diving on the floor. She's hustling. This whole team hustles. But Courtney Becker, I think, sometimes gets lost when you see Katie with all the highlights, Ava Hawthorne with highlights, Anna Miller with blocks. She sometimes gets left out of the conversation, but true Bulldog fans and people that watch this team night after night understand her true impact. And I think it comes with her defensive intensity and her physicality when grabbing rebounds. She has been really impressive. So I think for the Drake women, going to St. Thomas for the first time ever, going to St. Thomas, you're going up against a team that has Jolene Ben, who puts up 16 points per game, Jade Hill with 14, and then Amber Salia with 12 points a game. The team is 7-4 with losses to Iowa State, Wichita State. They're a good team, really good coach. The coaching battle between Pullman and then you have Sin as well. Sin has been there for 20 years. A really talented coach for the St. Thomas Tommies. But I just like Drake's athleticism in this game. And I think Katie Dinnebier, her ability to truly read defenses and be able to get the ball moving around to different players, Drake's ability to have great depth. They've had back-to-back games where they've played 13 players. I think that helps them just in the long run. Courtney Becker on the rebounding. I just like all the athleticism Drake has over St. Thomas. So I think Drake takes them down and then gets set ready for a battle against Evansville as Missouri Valley Conference play starts coming up next week. So there's your Drake women's basketball preview. Jumping right ahead, because like we said, busy show today. Jumping straight ahead to the Drake men who take on Green Bay in a game where you look at the box score and you see a Drake team 10-0 and you see a Green Bay team at 2-11. What X's and O's are you going to really bring up? And there's not much. I mean, I think Drake, all they really have to do is just continue to do those three keys we mentioned against Kansas State, where have the starters impact early. Mascari needs to get going early. Don't let it just be Sturts, Maniau, Abreu. Get all those guys involved early. Rebound the ball. Drake has been outstanding this season, rebounding the ball and cleaning up the glass against really talented teams too, like Vanderbilt, FAU, Kansas State, who towered over Drake. I mean, they had 2 7-footers on the floor, and Drake still out-rebounded the Wildcats. So, as long as you do that, and I think it'd be interesting to see this weekend, hopefully, against a team like Green Bay that has struggled, maybe more time off the bench for Banks, who I think will be a key contributor moving forward into Valley play, just with his style and his athleticism and the way he's a high flyer and is really fast with the ball and can spin into the paint, can make some really hard shots look easy. It'd be interesting to see if he gets more playing time. But the main story of this whole game comes from the head coach of Green Bay, who you would know in Gottlieb. So Gottlieb does his show for Fox while still being the head coach at Green Bay, and it has caused a lot of drama because you're seeing Green Bay at 2-11. Gottlieb made some comments throughout this week that had just blown up on social media. We tried to get him on the show. I sent a message to Green Bay, and they were like, yeah, absolutely. Let me just double check with Gottlieb, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Next morning, Gottlieb's all over the news, and I'm just like, all right, well, that was a fun thought to get the coach on, because now he's not going to do media. He's not going to do this podcast. So the biggest thing happened where Green Bay, Gottlieb is previewing their game against Michigan Tech, and he calls them Nobody You. And you can listen to the full interview. I mean, he says Nobody You, and he tries to clean it up by saying, he was mentioning how, they scheduled tough teams, but he also says that he wants to schedule tougher teams. It's all over the place. It's all muddy. But they lose to Michigan Tech by 2 at home, fall to 2-11. And he's under a microscope now by the nation. And he's also going on Twitter and he's attacking Adam Schefter from the NFL, saying he's getting his facts wrong. And then Scheffner puts him in his place by also saying, hey, maybe instead of being 2-10, being on social media, you should focus up and be in the film room. And Gottlieb said they were cool and they texted afterwards and it was fine. But man, just so much drama is swallowing up this Green Bay team. And you're going into a Knapp Center that I don't think will be packed because you have all the college football playoffs going on. And I don't blame people for that. But this is a 10-0 team, a team that just took down Kansas State on the road in a true road game now, because we heard from Brian Harden on Twitter how that was originally called a neutral site game, but after talking with the NCAA, both athletic directors and the NCAA come to an agreement that it is now a true road game. So that was a home game for Kansas State, which, I mean, if you watch the game, that was a home game for Kansas State. They had the Wildcat in the middle. Fans all over the place. Drake, though, great. Kudos to the Drake fans for traveling. That is something we have seen grow throughout the time. As DeVries era went on, and now with McCollum, they continue to travel. Kudos to you, Drake fans. Makes me very proud. But just, if you're Gottlieb, you have an opportunity to take down one of the last 4 teams unbeaten in the country. And you just have all this drama all surrounding you and your other job of being a radio host. I think Drake comes out with an easy win. The only thing that concerns me about Drake is after that Kansas State game, all the emotions, you're 10-0, everybody's talking about you in the state. What makes me nervous is if they have a hangover, they're still thinking about how awesome that buzzer beater was or game winner, I should say, because there's like 3 seconds left when Sturts hit that shot. Still thinking about that and looking past a 2-11 team as you're going up against a really good Belmont team who fell last night against UC Irvine, but going up against a strong Belmont team the following Sunday in your first home game in the Valley. That's what makes me nervous about the game, but I have great confidence in McCollum, in this team, because they're a veteran group of guys. They are guys that have been, through undefeated seasons, have won championships. Ben McCollum will have his guys ready. I don't see him looking past Green Bay whatsoever. But that's my only concern. Other than that, Drake, just follow your 3 keys. Get the starters involved early. I want to see Banks more involved off the bench. Hopefully, Howard gets involved too. Start to get these guys in one last time, in quick rotations, because hopefully you have such a big lead, you can allow yourself to do that one last time before Valley play starts. So that's my Drake men's basketball preview. I think the Bulldogs, both teams, come out with victories and head into the holidays with some extra cheer. But let's get into the college football playoffs. I am so excited. Like I said, seeing those photos this morning at like 7 a.m. of cars lined up in South Bend, it warms my heart. I love college football. And people will mention, I saw in Pardon the Interruption on ESPN how college football is spitting in the eye of the NFL by going up against them on Saturday. I'm all for it. I live in Iowa where we have no professional teams. College football is everything. Yeah, I'll watch a college football playoff game probably over a Chiefs-Texans game. And I know that's not how it is over America, but in places like Iowa, college football, it truly does just mean more. College sports hold a different place in our hearts. And so this 12-team college football playoffs, with its kind of, I think there's some things they need to look at. But overall, I can't be too upset. I love the 12-team playoff, and I think they will fix the issues. Like, I think if you're a top 12 team, they just need to rank the top 12 teams. I think you get rid of like the whole seeding thing, if that makes sense. Like, if Alabama was ranked 12, which I'm glad they kicked out Alabama, but I'm just saying, if you were ranked 12, and then you get kicked out of a 12-team playoff, that just doesn't make sense. And teams like Notre Dame get in, and they have the most embarrassing loss of the season. And, like, and they haven't played anyone. And you could say the same for Indiana, who Notre Dame plays. It's just, I think there's some things that need to be fixed up. But overall, I'm really excited for tonight, the start of college football playoffs. Let's just jump right into Indiana, Notre Dame tonight. Number 10, Indiana, taking on number 7, Notre Dame. The best team Notre Dame will, I think, face all year. Because before that, you had Notre Dame fans say, well, look at what we did week 1 against Texas A&M in Texas A&M. Yeah, that was a good win in week 1. Now, Texas A&M, I don't even believe we're in the top 25 at the end of the year. Yeah. But look at, we beat Navy and Army. If you're pulling Navy and Army as your best wins of the season, you had a really easy schedule. And then don't even mention that you lost to Northern Illinois. And I just think Notre Dame got in because of their brand. They knew the money they would bring in, having a playoff game in South Bend. But outside of that point, I think Notre Dame is a team that I don't really fear their quarterback in Leonard in passing, but I fear him with his running ability. So he is getting better in the passing game. We saw him struggle kind of early in the year, but he's starting to get some confidence. But he only threw over 200 yards 4 times and only threw over 215 once. So I'm not afraid at all about his ability to throw the ball down the field, but his ability to escape the pocket is huge. 14 rushing touchdowns, 16 passing touchdowns. And the only way Indiana wins the game tonight is they stop the run. And Indiana in the Big Ten led in rushing yards allowed per game with around only 70. But they had a pretty easy schedule. And when they played Ohio State, the toughest team on their schedule, and a team that I think compares to Notre Dame fairly well, they allowed 115 yards rushing. And I just think Notre Dame is so built on the ground when you have guys like Jeremiah Love who rushed for 949 yards and 15 touchdowns. Irish, 3 guys with 600-plus rushing yards. I just don't see a way that Indiana is able to stop all 3 of those guys. They had 5 guys with over 100 yards rushing the ball this year. I just think Notre Dame's ability to ground and pound is going to put a chokehold on the game and on Indiana. And that's without being said that Notre Dame has the top 5 defense in the country in terms of scoring. And I think that's Notre Dame's true identity. While their identity on offense is to run the ball and ground and pound, as a team, people fear their defense. And there's a few guys out that could really make differences for Notre Dame. So the Irish are favored by 6.5 points. I think this game for Indiana will look a lot like it did against Ohio State, where they kept it close, but Ohio State was able to get a few big plays that just sealed the game. And I think that's what Notre Dame does tonight in front of a packed crowd in South Bend. It's snowing. It's football weather. I think Notre Dame grounds and pounds, and their defense holds Indiana, who is a veteran group of players. They will be ready to play, and I think it'll be close for the most part, but a few home run plays by the Notre Dame advance them into the college football playoff in my eyes. So then we have SMU at Penn State, number 11 versus 6. Penn State surprised me with how well they kept up with Oregon, the number 1 team in the country. I thought Oregon was going to run all over and destroy Penn State. I don't have a lot of confidence in Franklin in big games. I'm not a big Franklin guy regardless, and his, PR stunts and how bad he is and how big of a headache he is for probably that Penn State PR team. But they went punch for punch with the Ducks, and that surprised me. It put confidence into me and maybe, made me think that Penn State could be not a legit title contender. I don't think they go that far, but where they sit in the bracket, they could go to the semifinals. They have a nice kind of pathway to the semifinals. And what they just need to do is get Tyler Warren involved. In games that they do that, Penn State looks so unbeatable. But in a few of the big games this year, they went away from him. Tyler Warren, the tight end, over 1,000 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns this season, versus Oregon, got the ball 7 times for over 80 yards. They were targeting him quite a bit. But against Ohio State, their one loss this year at home, they only gave him the ball 4 times for 47 yards, which was his 5th lowest of the season. So I don't know why sometimes it looks like they just don't look his way when he's clearly the best offensive player on the Penn State squad. But against Oregon, they did it, and I think going into the playoffs, that is going to be a major point of emphasis for Franklin in this team. It should be. And I think they get over SMU, I think pretty easily. I wasn't too impressed with SMU or Clemson in that championship game. It was a great game to watch. Both of those teams paired up well, but just didn't give me confidence going into the playoffs for either of those teams. So I think Penn State, with the weather and the crowd whiteout, which is a bucket list moment for me to go to. I think that would be a really cool atmosphere. But I think Penn State moves forward. Moving on to 12 Clemson at number 5 Texas. Prime spot for Texas. Everyone mentioned because Ohio State was originally in that 5th spot until they got embarrassed by Michigan. But prime spot for Texas. You either want that number 1 seed or that 5th seed if you get into the playoffs. And I think Texas is sitting pretty despite that loss to Georgia. The biggest question for me going into this one stems at the quarterback position for Texas, and it's if Quinn Ewers can protect the ball. In the last 3 games of the regular season, he threw the ball, or he had 3 interceptions. Against Georgia, 2 interceptions, and they lost that game. Can he protect the ball? And against a team like Clemson that Dabo has always had a physical defensive front, they're going to be bringing in blitz packages, trying to get in the face of Ewers. I still like Texas. I think the 12 points that they're giving Texas is a little high, so I like Clemson to cover. But I think the defensive front for Texas is so big that it's going to take down Clemson. It's going to be a physical game, back and forth. Weather isn't going to really play a factor in this one. It was funny. I think it was Fox on Instagram. They had the different weather and conditions for each game, and it was like Ohio State, Tennessee, it's going to be 20 degrees and possible snow. Notre Dame, it's going to be 25, feel like 10, and snow. They're going through, and then they get to Texas, and they're like, oh, chilly one in Texas, 60 degrees. Living in Iowa, 60 degrees. It's T-shirts and shorts. Come on now. But so weather isn't going to affect them. It's going to be a physical game. I think it's a 23-17 type victory for Texas. So give me the Longhorns advancing, but if you're a bettor, I would take Clemson to cover that 12 points. That just seems like a lot of points for Texas after their kind of struggles in those last 3 games, stemming from turnovers. So if Ewers protects the ball, Texas advances, I think, fairly easily, but 12 seems a little high. Moving on to my game. Tennessee, Ohio State, 9-8 in the Horseshoe. Drama with fans and Tennessee fans. Are they going to take over the Horseshoe? A lot of tickets being sold, players being surprised on each side that there's so many Tennessee fans coming up. But just a sour taste in my mouth with this Ohio State team. Being embarrassed on national TV against Michigan, don't have confidence. And watching that Michigan game before the final whistle, you're sitting there going, what team in the playoffs does Ohio State beat? What Ohio State team shows up? When they were playing against Oregon, man, that looked like a totally different team. They looked confident. The defense had some major struggles. Burke, if I'm Tennessee, I am airing that ball out on the right side of the field right away. Burke has been struggling. So many penalties that get thrown on the secondary for holding. And that concerns me because Tennessee is such a good passing team. But with a makeshift offensive line, I don't know how Ohio State is able to control a Tennessee defense that has proven itself to be one of the best in the country. So Ohio State, you lose Josh Simmons against Oregon. Then Mikowski goes down. And then the biggest one in Seth McLaughlin. And we saw how huge that was against Michigan. And what Ohio State needs to do with that makeshift offensive line, and Chip Kelly has to call a better game. Where has he been? He hasn't answered to anyone in this 2-week span. But what he needs to do is get into that 2-minute type of offense. The 2-minute drill type of offense. Because when they tried to establish the run, Michigan proved how they could hit Judkins and Henderson in the backfield even as soon as they touched the ball. The run is not going to be, you're not going to run the ball to set up the pass anymore. You just can't with this makeshift offensive line. You have to run a 2-minute drill and get the ball out of Howard's hands quickly. And the best drive of the entire game for Ohio State against Michigan was in that final 2 minutes of the first half where they scored a touchdown. So you need to set up slant patterns for Jeremiah Smith and Ibuka and Carnell Tate. You have to get the ball out of Howard's hands quickly. And Michigan, a team that forced so many 3rd and longs and did it easily against this Buckeye team with their blitz packages against the hurt offensive line. Ohio State cannot afford to have 3rd and longs as many times as they did against Michigan because Tennessee is the number one defense in 3rd down and in red zone in the country. So, yes, you have to set up the pass or run the pass to set up the run. If you're Ohio State, you have to pass the ball to set up the run. Tennessee, picked most by fans, and I'm not going to argue with it. What Ohio State team is going to show up? This Ohio State team has not given me any confidence in their final few games of the season, especially against Michigan. That is still a sour taste in my mouth. Tennessee, a team too, though, on offense that has had some lulls. The defense has been consistent, and we always hear defense travels. The offense has lulled, so that gives me a little more confidence in the Buckeyes. But I'm taking Ohio State because this is a game Day has to win. Day has to win this game. If they lose in the first round, along with the multiple losses to Michigan and along with no championships in his career at Ohio State, you have to move on. You would have to move on from Day and Chip Kelly. So that's my reasoning for Ohio State to win because it's a must-win for Ryan Day. So a busy college football slate. I'm so excited. So excited to go through all these games. Saturday, I know I'm going to have during the Drake game on my phone. We'll probably have the games going on. I know Admire from time to time, as he's calling the games, you'll see him with the computer to his side watching his Chiefs, But I'm sure he'll have college football games going on as well. Everyone's going to be focused in on this. And I know as soon as that whistle blows or final buzzer for that Drake game, I go and get my interview with Coach McCollum, and then I'm hustling back home to watch that Ohio State-Tennessee game. Should be a good one. Ohio State, I'm shocked they're favored by 7.5. That seems like a lot of points for a team that was just embarrassed by Michigan. A lot of points. And 7 really isn't that much. It just, after what we saw from Ohio State, that seems like a lot. The over-under was at 45.5. I would take the over. I think these two offenses are strong enough where I could see it going well over that 45.5. But my picks, again, Ohio State at home because it's a must-win for Ryan Day. Texas at home, Penn State, and Notre Dame. And now as I say that out loud, I'm taking all home teams in the playoffs. Makes me feel uneasy. I think Tennessee can beat Ohio State. And I think Indiana, if they just played their absolute minds out, they could beat Notre Dame. Those are the two ones that I went back and forth on for a little bit. But I like Notre Dame's rushing. And again, I'll say it one more time. Ryan Day has to win that game to keep a job. So moving into our final thing, I always like to talk about my Seahawks to round out a Friday show. And thank you all so much for the views and comments on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter from Sunday night's debacle. But the only positives I can really bring out for Seattle as they go up against a really good Vikings team is Geno and Walker appear to be healthy enough to play. But Walker is going to get hit in the backfield and is going to have to really get warmed back up, on the sidelines of getting used to playing football again after being out for as many weeks as he was. But the offensive line for for the Seahawks is just a joke. The offensive line for the Seahawks is just a joke. Look at these photos. It's not even funny anymore. We've seen the same issues for 5-6 years, and nothing is getting fixed. Nothing is getting fixed. And then the defense, I think, is getting slightly better, but I'm shocked Witherspoon isn't playing as good as he usually does. Reek Woolen was burned against Green Bay. It was embarrassing. I haven't seen him play that bad in a while. And I feel just worse after that Packers loss than I did against losses against the Giants or Bills. Because that was a game set up like, hey, if the season ended right now, the Packers would go to Seattle in the playoffs. That was a potential playoff game, and Seattle did not show up. Not even close. And I think Geno does give Seattle a little more confidence against a Vikings team. And I know there's some Seahawks fans that were so happy Howell was in. It doesn't matter who's in at quarterback. I've said that for years with the offensive line issues because no one is succeeding with an offensive line playing as poorly as they are. No one is. Geno is playing his best, I think. I think he's the best option. He knows the offense. He's been better at scanning the field and going through his progressions and not just sticking on to DK or Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's actually dumping it down to Charbonnet or Walker, hopefully, against the Vikings when there's nothing down the field. He's improved on that. And for those Seahawks fans who think Howell should be in, no one's going to have time in the pocket with that Seahawks offensive line, and you think Seattle should go with the guy who threw 21 touchdowns and 21 interceptions a season ago, led the league in interceptions? No. Geno's the guy. Maybe not in the long run. Not even maybe. He is not the guy in the long run. He's not going to give Seattle a Super Bowl. But Seattle has so many other issues they need to fix before you worry about Howell or Smith, before you worry about a quarterback. The 4-game winning streak for Seattle, I think, kind of fooled us for how good this team would be, because they weren't against great teams. 2 of them against the Cardinals and 1 against the Jets. I think the only way Seattle is able to get a victory over the Vikings is multiple turnovers. They get multiple turnovers. Against the Cardinals, they got multiple turnovers, a pick 6. Against the Jets, you had the thick 6 with Leonard Williams. The only way Seattle is able to win games is turnovers. And they only got 1 against the Packers, and it kind of came in early in the fourth quarter where they were all already down by so much that it was hard to get excited for. But there's just too many issues on this Seahawks team, and that loss to Green Bay really showed how far separated Seattle is from the really talented teams. So I'm going with the Vikings on the road. I think Darnold will have plenty of time in the pocket. I think the Vikings will send blitz packages that really hurt Walker and Geno Smith. I just think the Vikings take down the Seahawks, and now Seattle just has to hope that the Rams struggle, a team that looks really good of late. So there's my Seattle Seahawk rant. But go enjoy some college football playoffs tonight. Notre Dame, Indiana. Go enjoy some Valley basketball over the weekend, along with more NFL and college football. Should just be a really fun weekend of sports to get you into the spirits of the holidays coming up next week. Next Monday, we'll have a show as usual, but then taking the rest of the week to enjoy some family time, going to Missouri to see Megan's family. Should be a really fun time, but thank you all so much for your support, for subscribing. Continue to click that subscribe button. Follow us at Media Row Pod on YouTube, at Media Row Pod on Twitter. Also follow myself on Twitter at Justin_C Miller, TikTok on Justin Miller on air. Thank you all for your comments, your likes, your views, everything. It means the world. Thank you so much. Go enjoy some great weekends of sports here coming up. This is the best time of the year. It really is. That's why there's a song about it.